A powerful billionaire walks into his mansion, only to freeze at the sound of his daughter's terrified voice whispering, "Don't hurt us." What he discovers next shatters his world, and uncovers a truth he buried long ago. Stay with this story to the end. It is not what you think. Before we begin this powerful story, make sure to subscribe and click the bell icon so you never miss any of our life-changing content. If this story resonates with you, like the video and share it. This is more than just entertainment. Each story is crafted with a deep moral lesson to inspire, uplift, and spark reflection. Welcome to a community where every story has a purpose. Millionaire walked into his home and froze when he heard his daughter begging, "Don't hurt us." It was supposed to be a normal evening. Late client call. Missed dinner again. I walked up the marble steps of my estate. Silent. Too silent. The fountain outside the house was still running. The hallway lights were dim. My polished shoes echoed as I stepped into the grand foyer. Something felt wrong. Then I heard it. A soft, trembling voice from upstairs. My daughter's voice. Barely audible. Fragile. Scared. "Please do not hurt us." My body froze. Keys slipped from my fingers. They clattered onto the marble like gunshots in the silence. I dropped my briefcase and ran. Heart pounding. Every beat a scream. Up the curved staircase, 2 steps at a time. My bedroom door was open. The closet light was on. I rushed in, eyes scanning. And there she was, my 6-year-old daughter. Curled under the vanity. Arms wrapped protectively around her younger brother. Both trembling. No intruder. No danger. Just fear. Raw, soul-breaking fear. I knelt slowly, hands raised. "Sweetheart, it's me. It's Daddy." She flinched. And that shattered me. "Is she here?" she whispered. "Will she scream again?" My mouth dried. My throat locked. I could not answer. Because I knew who she was. And she was my wife. Or what was left of her. Beautiful. Brilliant. Once full of life and grace. Now consumed by pain and pills and shadows. I had been gone too long. Too wrapped in business deals. Flights. Luxury. Building an empire. And I never saw my home collapsing. That night, I sat on the nursery floor until they fell asleep. I did not sleep. I could not. I watched the moonlight crawl across the carpet and realized I had failed. As a husband. As a father. As a man. The next morning, I sent the driver to take the kids to school. I stayed back. She came downstairs with sunglasses on. Wearing elegance like armor. Avoiding my eyes. I made her tea. She sipped it with shaking hands. And I asked one question. "What happened to you, Eliza?" She blinked. Paused. Then laughed. Not a joyful laugh. But one that comes from too much silence. "I broke," she said. "You just were not here to hear it." And suddenly, the picture came into focus. I had not just missed birthdays. I had missed her heart crumbling. Her soul dimming. Her world turning gray. I had given her diamonds. But no time. A mansion. But no warmth. That day, I canceled my meetings. For the first time in 12 years. And I stayed. We talked. 4 hours. Cried. Fought. And remembered. We remembered the night we had nothing. Eating dollar pizza on the sidewalk. Laughing. Dreaming. Believing. She had stood by me when I was a man with a vision and no money. She had stitched my suits by hand before my first investor pitch. She had waited tables to support my first startup. And I had promised her forever. But somewhere in the noise of success, I had forgotten the music of love. I asked her if she still believed in us. She said she did not know, but she agreed to stay if I proved I could be the man she once believed in. And so I started over. Not with stocks, not with acquisitions, but with bedtime stories, piano lessons, Sunday pancakes, and dinner at the table, no phones allowed. It was hard, harder than I expected. The kids were quiet, cautious. Eliza watched me like a hawk, every action judged, every word measured. But I did not flinch, because this was the only deal that mattered. I sold the yacht, canceled the Europe expansion, hired a family therapist, and one evening, my daughter placed her small hand in mine and whispered, "Thank you for coming home, Daddy." I swallowed the tears and smiled, because in that moment, I was richer than I had ever been. But healing was not a straight line. One evening, I came home early and heard Eliza crying on the balcony. I stepped out quietly. She did not see me. She held a photo of us from our first anniversary. She whispered, "I miss who we used to be." My chest tightened. I wanted to run to her, hold her, tell her we could find our way back. But before I could move, she said something else. Something I was not ready to hear. I do not know if I still love him, or if I just love who he used to be. I froze. That night, I sat alone in the kitchen, staring at the cold tea I had made for her. Everything I had done, everything I had changed. It still might not be enough. And that terrified me. The next morning, I left her a letter on the piano. Not to guilt her, not to beg, but to remind her of something real. Eliza, if love was a contract, I breached it. If it was a promise, I broke it. But if it was a vow, I am here. Still vowing, still trying, still yours. If you will have me. She did not reply. Days passed. Then a week, then 2, until one night, I returned home from dropping the kids off at a birthday party. The house was quiet again. I stepped inside and froze, because I heard her voice from upstairs, whispering, and this time, she was not afraid. She was singing, softly, to our children. And then I heard my daughter's voice again, but she was laughing, a pure, ringing laugh, like the sound of a soul unbreaking. I climbed the stairs slowly, not wanting to break the moment, not knowing what I would find, not knowing if we were whole again, but hoping, praying. And just as I reached the top, Eliza stepped out from the hallway, eyes red, lips trembling, holding something in her hands. It was the letter I wrote. She looked up at me and said, I read it, every word, and I remembered. She walked closer. Tears glistened, but her voice was steady. I remembered the boy who once stood in the rain with me, soaking wet, just because I was crying and refused to move. Her fingers trembled as she held the letter to her heart. I remembered the man who used to look at me like I was his whole world, even when we shared a mattress on the floor and had to choose between rent and ramen. She took a shaky breath. I forgot that man existed, because the one who took his place was always gone, even when he was home. I swallowed hard. My heart pounded so loudly, I thought she could hear it echo through the marble halls. I wanted to hate you, she whispered. I tried. But every time I looked at our children, I saw pieces of the man I married. She stepped even closer now, so close I could see the tiny freckle near her left eye. I used to kiss every morning. And tonight, she said, I heard our daughter laugh. Really laugh. For the first time in months. Her lips trembled again. But what broke me was that she was laughing. With you. A single tear slipped down her cheek. She let it fall. She did not wipe it away. Eliza. My voice cracked. I am not trying to win you back with promises. I just want to earn the right to be by your side again. Every day. No matter how long it takes. She stared at me. Silence thick between us. Then, she reached out, took my hand, and placed it gently on her heart. You already are, she whispered. But if you ever disappear on us again, I will break every string on that grand piano downstairs. We both laughed. That warm, tearful kind of laugh. That sounds like forgiveness. And for the first time in years, she leaned into me. Not just with her body, but with her soul. We stood there, wrapped in the kind of silence that heals. And then we heard them. Little footsteps. Tiny voices. Our daughter peeked out from the bedroom door, dragging her teddy bear behind her. Mommy, she asked, is Daddy staying forever now? Eliza looked up at me. I looked down at her. And together, we said, yes, forever. But forever has its tests, its trials, its painful echoes. Because love is not magic. It is work. It is truth. It is choosing the same person, over and over, even after life tries to pull you apart. And just when we thought the hardest part was behind us, the past came knocking. Literally. 2 days later, a letter arrived. No name. No return address. Just a gold seal I had not seen in over a decade. Eliza opened it first. Her face went pale. She handed it to me without a word. Inside was a single photograph. An old one. Me. At a private island event. Drunk. Surrounded by faces I barely remembered. But one face stood out. The woman next to me. Leaning in. Whispering something. And the back of the photo read, "Your past is not finished with you yet." I looked up at Eliza. She did not speak. She just stared. And for the first time since we started rebuilding, I saw doubt return to her eyes. Eliza stared at the photo. Her fingers clenched the edge of the frame. Not violently, but like someone bracing for impact. She did not speak. And neither did I. The silence between us was no longer warm. It was cautious. Wounded. I knew that night. I remembered it, barely. A private equity retreat on a remote island. Years ago. Long before we hit rock bottom. I had gone alone. Eliza had been pregnant with our second child. I told her it was just business. But I remembered the drinks. The music. The isolation. And now the evidence. She looked at me. Not with anger. But with something far worse. Disappointment. "Eliza," I said softly. "I do not know who sent this. Or why. But that man in the photo. He is not the man standing here now." She looked down at the letter again. "Do you remember what you whispered to her?" My heart stopped. Because the truth was, I did not. And that terrified me. "I do not," I said honestly. "I wish I did. But I was careless. Stupid. And if I hurt you, if I disrespected our vows, I will own it. But I will not run from it." She nodded slowly, but said nothing. She walked past me, letter in one hand, truth in the other. That night, she slept in the guest room. For the first time in months. And I sat on the edge of our bed, staring at the photo again. Who sent it? Why now? Just when we were healing. Just when the children had begun to laugh again. There was no return address. No name. Only the golden seal. But I recognized it. It was the old emblem of Marwick Holdings. My first major investor. A company I had cut ties with. After discovering the corruption within. They had lost everything when I pulled out. And swore I would pay for it. But that was years ago. Could they still be watching me? Still trying to destroy what I built? I picked up my phone. Opened the encrypted messages. And found something I had not seen in months. A missed call from Ethan. My former CFO. And the only man who knew every corner of my past. At the time, I had thought he left quietly. Now I was not so sure. I called him. It rang once. Twice. Then went straight to voicemail. Something was coming. I could feel it. Not just a test of my marriage, but of everything I had rebuilt. And I was not ready. The next morning, I woke up to find Eliza gone. No note. No message. The kids were still sleeping. The kitchen was untouched. And her wedding ring was sitting on the counter. I stood there, staring at the ring. The one I had placed on her finger 12 years ago. In a church with peeling paint. And a choir of 5 children who sang off-key but with heart. It looked smaller now. Lonely. Like it had been waiting for this moment. I reached out slowly. Touched the metal. Cold. Heavy. Like the weight of my mistakes. Eliza never took it off. Not during the years I was gone. Not even during the silence that followed the worst arguments. But she had left it now. And that said more than words ever could. I rushed outside. The car was gone. Her phone was off. I called her sister. Her best friend. No one knew anything. Hours passed. Each one heavier than the last. I made breakfast for the kids. Tried to keep my voice calm. Tried to keep my hands from shaking. My daughter looked up at me. Eyes wide and curious. Where is Mommy? I smiled. A lie wrapped in warmth. She just needed some air, sweetheart. She will be back soon. But I did not believe it. I called my driver. Checked the security cameras. Tracked the gate log. She had left at 6:14 a.m. Alone. By noon, I received a message. From an unknown number. No greeting. No threats. Just a photo. Of Eliza. Sitting in a cafe. With a man. His back was to the camera. But I knew that posture. That suit. Ethan. My former CFO. My former friend. The man who vanished without explanation. Now sitting across from my wife. I felt a rush of heat in my chest. Then cold. Because this was not a coincidence. It was a move. Calculated. Deliberate. I stared at the screen. At Eliza's face. She was not smiling. Not leaning in. She looked conflicted. Like someone hearing something they did not want to believe. And I realized. She was not running away. She was searching. For the truth. About me. About the past I thought I buried. But if Ethan was the one digging it up, then we were both in danger. Because Ethan knew things. Real things. Ugly things. Not lies. Not rumors. But truths I had tried to forget. Deals made in desperation. Partners I should have never trusted. Documents signed in exchange for silence. And if Eliza saw them, if she believed them, then I could lose everything. Not just my name, Not just my company, but the one woman who ever saw me. Before I became the man the world now feared, I grabbed my coat, keys, wallet. I called the driver, told him to find out where that cafe was. Then I opened my safe and pulled out the envelope I hoped I would never need. Inside were names, dates, numbers, receipts of sins, proof of what I once did to survive, and one photo of a woman, not Eliza, but the woman in the photo from the letter, the one beside me on that island. She had not just been a guest. She had been something else entirely. And if Ethan told Eliza who she really was, everything could fall apart. I stood in the kitchen, staring at that small shining ring, my hands shaking. Memories played like flashes behind my eyes. Eliza's laughter, the way she once used to trace circles on my wrist when I worked too late. The first time she held our daughter and whispered, "She looks like you, but I hope she has my strength." I picked up the ring, closed my fist around it, and then I called Marcus. Marcus was more than a lawyer. He was the one man who had kept my name out of the fire when I walked away from Marwick Holdings. And he was the only one who had access to the sealed file, the one I hoped I would never have to open. He answered on the second ring. "Tell me you did not get dragged back into this," he said. "I think it has already begun," I replied. "They sent Eliza something, and she is meeting with Ethan." A long pause. "Then we are out of time." He told me to meet him, alone, tonight, and to bring the envelope. I glanced upstairs. The kids were still asleep, the house too quiet for a Sunday morning. I scribbled a note, left it with the babysitter. Then I drove. Not to our law firm, not to the office, but to the back of a bookstore, one I had not visited in years, a place Marcus used for private meetings, when things got too loud in the corporate world. I parked, stepped inside. The scent of paper and time hung in the air. Marcus sat in a corner booth, files open, eyes hard. He looked up. "You know who she is, right? The woman in the island photo?" He nodded. "You remember anything about her?" I paused, then spoke. "She was dangerous. Not in the obvious way, but in the way you sense too late." "She was not a guest," Marcus said. "She was an asset." My heart sank. "She worked for Marwick," he continued. "Corporate intelligence. Her job was to seduce, record, and ruin. You were her final assignment. And they kept everything." He pushed a file across the table. Inside were screenshots, surveillance, whispers caught on audio, deals I had never consented to, documents I had never signed, but my voice attached to them. They manipulated your voice. They fabricated deals. They have been waiting for the perfect time to use them. I leaned back, trying to breathe. And Ethan. He was paid to disappear, until they needed him again, until Eliza became the leverage. I closed the file. They will use this to destroy me, to turn her against me, to rip apart everything I rebuilt. Marcus nodded. "Unless you beat them to it." I looked up. "You mean, tell her everything?" "Every single thing. Before they do. Before they twist it. Before they weaponize it." I stared at the manila folder, at the sins of my past, waiting to kill my future. And then I stood. Because if there was one thing I knew, I would rather lose everything than lose the woman who once saw the light in me. When all I offered was shadow, I would go to her tonight, And I would tell her. Not the story I crafted, but the one I lived. Even if it meant watching her walk away. At least this time, she would know the truth. But as I stepped out of the bookstore, a car pulled up, black, unmarked, and from the back seat, Ethan stepped out, smiling. Going somewhere, old friend? I froze. Ethan's voice. Cool. Measured. Too calm for someone who had vanished without a trace, only to return with a dagger behind his back. He closed the car door behind him, stepped into the fading daylight like a man who had waited years for this moment. His suit was sharp, tailored. Same brand I used to wear when we built the empire side by side. But the eyes were not the same. They were hollow and hungry. I thought you were dead, I said. My voice came out rough, like gravel scraping against memory. In some ways I was, he smirked. Buried under your success. Erased. Forgotten. Discarded. You disappeared, I replied. You left. No warning. No goodbye. I left, he nodded, because I knew what was coming. I knew the walls were closing in, and I was not going to be collateral damage in your fairy tale. I stepped closer, fist clenched around the envelope inside my coat. What do you want, Ethan? He tilted his head, studied me like a chessboard. What I want, he said slowly, is not revenge. It is balance. Balance. He chuckled. You took everything, Nathan. The company, the future, even the admiration. You became the golden boy, and I became a ghost. I gave you half the credit, I growled. I always did. Not in the rooms that mattered, he snapped. Not in the rooms where power listened. There was a beat of silence. A car passed in the distance. Then he said it. Eliza deserves to know everything. My chest tightened. You went to her. I showed her the recordings, the documents, the pictures. I told her who the woman was in the photo. I staggered back, as if punched in the gut. And? I asked, barely above a whisper. She did not scream. She did not cry. She just said one thing. He leaned in, close, enough for me to smell the bitterness on his breath. She said, I need to hear it from him. My jaw clenched. She still wanted the truth. From me. Not from my enemy. Not from the lies. You came all this way, I said slowly, just to warn me? He smiled again. But this time, there was something sad behind it. No, he said. I came to make you choose. He pulled out a small device. A flash drive. Held it between two fingers like it weighed nothing. Everything is on here. The real story. The truth. The recordings, the files. All of it. He extended his hand. Take it. Go to her. Tell her everything. I did not move. What's the catch? I asked. His smile disappeared. There is no catch. Just know. Once she hears it all, there will be no more pretending. No more polished versions. No more I was just trying to survive. I took the drive. It was colder than I expected. Ethan turned, walked back to the car. But before stepping in, he paused. Some men build empires. Some destroy them. The hardest truth is, sometimes they are the same man. He got in. The car drove away. And I stood there. Flash drive in one hand. Envelope in the other. One holding the sins I confessed to myself. The other holding the sins I never wanted to face. I looked up at the sky. Evening settling in. Lights blinking on across the city.
My phone buzzed. A message. From Eliza.
I am at the lakehouse.
Come alone.
And in that moment, I knew everything would change tonight.
For better. Or for worse.
But there would be no more running. No more secrets.
Only truth. And whatever came after.
I drove faster than I should have. Every red light felt like a lifetime. Every curve in the road was another twist in my gut. The lake house sat just beyond the city.
Hidden in the trees. Quiet. Timeless.
We had not been there in over a year. Not since the last time we tried to fix us.
And failed.
I pulled up to the gravel path.
No other cars. Just hers. Parked near the porch.
The lights inside were low. The lake behind the house shimmered in the dusk.
A calm surface. Hiding the storm beneath. I stepped out.
Flash drive in one pocket. Envelope in the other.
I walked to the door.
Each step heavier than the last. My hand hovered near the handle.
And then the door opened. She stood there. Eliza. Hair down. No makeup. Just her.
The woman I had loved since I was 22.
But her eyes. They were unreadable. Not cold. Not warm. Just waiting. I stepped inside.
She closed the door behind me. The silence pressed on my ears. She gestured toward the living room.
I followed. There, on the table, 2 cups of tea. Still steaming.
She had been waiting.
I sat. She did not.
She stood near the fireplace, arms crossed. I saw everything, she said quietly.
No filters. No edits. I nodded.
Then you know why I came.
I know why you came, she said.
But I do not know who you are anymore.
That hurt.
More than anything Ethan had said. More than anything anyone could show.
Eliza. I was not innocent.
I made choices. Some I am proud of. Many I am not.
She watched me. Still silent. I pulled out the flash drive. Laid it on the table.
This is what Ethan gave me. But it is not the full story. Then I pulled out the envelope. Laid it beside the drive.
This is.
She finally moved. Came closer. Sat across from me. Her eyes flicked between the 2 items. And then, for the first time since I arrived, she asked, "Why now, Nathan? Why not years ago? Why did you wait until someone else forced your hand?" I looked her in the eye.
Because I was afraid.
Afraid that if you knew everything, you would stop seeing the man you fell in love with, and only see the man I became to survive.
Tears filled her eyes. But she did not blink them away. I needed the truth, Nathan. Not perfection. Not protection. Just the truth. I took a deep breath. My truth is ugly. It is selfish. It is filled with broken promises and compromised values. But it is also yours. Because you were the only constant. The only reason I ever wanted to become more than what I was. She reached out slowly. Touched the envelope. Then the drive. But she did not open either. Not yet. Instead, she looked at me. "Do you love me?" "Yes." "Do you love our children?" "With everything I have." She exhaled. Long. Tired. "Then stay," she said softly. "Not as the man who built the empire. Not as the man who hid his past. But as the man who is finally ready to be real." I nodded. And then, a knock at the door. Not loud, but firm. Eliza looked at me. "What now?" I stood slowly,
because I already knew.
it was not over. Not yet. I walked to the door, opened it,
And standing there was a woman I had not seen in over a decade. The woman from the island.
older now, but unmistakable. She looked at me, eyes sharp, voice steady. We need to talk.
Before it is too late.
She stood there, the woman from the past.
The one I had tried so hard to forget. Now standing at the door of the life I was finally rebuilding. Eliza watched from behind me. Her hand rested gently on the frame of the doorway, as if holding on to something
fragile. The woman did not smile, did not threaten.
She only said, "I have come to set the record straight."
We let her in, not because we trusted her,
but because we were tired of the shadows.
She sat across from us, her voice calm,
but her words heavy.
She confessed to the surveillance,
to the manipulation, to the way Marwick Holdings had used her, to bury their mistakes beneath mine. But then she did something I never expected. She slid a folder across the table. Inside were sealed documents, audio transcripts,
and one statement, a confession, written by Ethan, signed,
dated just 2 days before he showed up again. He had tried to ruin me,
but in the end,
he had changed his mind. Perhaps guilt had found him after all. Eliza read every word, silently,
carefully,
and then she looked at me, with eyes no longer filled with doubt,
but with something deeper, understanding. She stood,
walked around the table,
and took my hand.
"I cannot change what happened," she whispered, "but I can choose what we do with what is left."
Tears filled my eyes, not of pain, but of release.
Because forgiveness is not forgetting. It is remembering without bitterness. We stood there in silence.
Me, Eliza,
and the woman who once played the role of my downfall. Now the unexpected messenger of closure.
When she left,
she said one thing to Eliza. "He never stopped loving you. Not for a second." And with that, she disappeared back into the past. That finally lost its grip on our future.
Months later,
the children laugh again.
The house feels like home.
We walk together in the evenings.
We talk more. About small things.
About real things. I still run my company, but I am no longer consumed by it. I learned that empires built without love are nothing more than castles made of sand.
And Eliza, she is more than my wife.
She is the compass that pointed me back
to who I truly was. Not a billionaire, not a survivor, but a man, capable of change, capable of truth,
capable of love that endures the storms.
Moral lesson:
life will test you. Success will tempt you to forget what truly matters. But no fortune is worth the cost of losing yourself, or the ones who believed in you when you had nothing. True strength is not measured by what you build with your hands, but by what you hold in your heart when the walls around you fall.
And sometimes,
the most powerful redemption begins with a simple act: telling the truth. Thank you for listening to this heartfelt story. If it touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment below, and remember, you are never alone.